One.
Hey, what's up, group? How you guys doing?
How you guys doing?
All right, well, we got a special guest today that I want to introduce. And first and foremost, we can't just say his name. We got to tell the truth here. Now, many of you will probably have heard of Perry Mason and Matlock and people like Jerry Spence and F. Lee Bailey. Forget about those people. They're nothings, okay? They're a joke. Okay, we have as a guest today. First of all, he's a Tri-C member. That's a good thing. But more importantly, he is the world's toughest lawyer. He's also probably, in his own words, the sexiest lawyer that ever lived and ever will live.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, somebody has to, because Joe thinks he's the sexiest in everything. We have to keep him in his place. But anyway, it's the one and only Andre Verdun. Welcome to the podcast, Andre.
Hey, Tony, it's so great to be here. I miss talking with you, and I'm so glad to be here with Joe and Nico. I think I've listened to almost every single episode, so I've been
You're the
keeping
one.
up with I've been keeping up with the excitement and comparing me to Jerry Spence. Wow, that's
Well, there is no comparison. You blow them away. I mean, come on, Johnny Cochran, please. I mean, this is Andre Verdun here. Okay, this is like your initials, AV, audio visual. You get them with your audio, your oratory, with your visual presentation. I mean, come on, man.
So Tony, there was this one time I was doing a wrestling match in New Jersey, and I was fighting this guy Homicide, and him and I were.
Now, was this in the court or?
No. This was in a wrestling ring.
See, we didn't do a proper introduction. So law is your hobby, but what is your passion? So what else why have we really brought you on here? As much as we need legal advice, probably.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure why you guys would bring me on here. I think that's a really bad idea.
We had nothing better to do tonight.
You guys have that explicit warning, right? I'll try not to use too many F words. So yeah, I'm a professional wrestler. I ran a wrestling promotion in Los Angeles for several years and wrestled in different promotions, and became very popular at one point for doing the death match wrestling, the barbed wire rope matches, and all kinds of crazy stuff. Then transitioned from that to being a lawyer, which is in many ways the same job, a little less blood. But I do criminal defense work, and I sue police officers for civil rights violations. I sue corporations. I sue banks, represent people. And so, well, that's me. Going back to the story though. So I was doing a match in New Jersey once, and I was wrestling this guy, and he told me like, I just had a concussion, so don't hit me in the head. So I said, okay, cool. So we went out there and doing this match, and it was kind of crazy. I come backstage and I had this big black eye, and I was not happy about that because I was supposed to start trial the following Monday in San Diego. So San Diego, I go down to court. I see my client who's dressed really nice. And I said, okay, well, let's go inside the courtroom and see if the prosecutor's here. And we walk inside, and the bailiff looks at me, looks at my client, looks at me and says, defendants have to wait outside. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm the attorney. And he's like, oh, what happened to your freaking eye? And then that's when the story of me being a wrestler got out. So now every time I go to the courts in San Diego, they're always asking for DVDs and stuff. So that's one of the times that I came into court pretty messed up because of the wrestling matches.
So I got to ask, like, was this something you loved as a kid? How does someone get into this? Like tell
Oh,
us.
being a lawyer? Yeah, it's you go to school.
Yeah, you used to watch all the law shows and get all amped up and put on a suit and run around.
So I assume you're talking about wrestling, right? Yeah, I was like obsessed with pro wrestling as a child. The NWA and became the promotion I really followed. Like the Jim Crockett promotion out in Carolinas and stuff like that. But you know, as I got older, it was like the only interest I had was getting into pro wrestling. And my path was a little unique though, because I was such a big wrestling fan, I started hosting these backyard wrestling matches in my backyard. And so, and at the time we were watching the ECW promotion. So they were trying to do, you know, the hardcore style wrestling with the blood and broken tables and all that stuff. And so we were having these backyard wrestling shows and we were creating these barbed wire rings and filling up with light tubes and stuff. And then video of these got out at my high school and they started circulating. And then all of a sudden we'd be doing these wrestling shows. We'd have like 300 people showing up to my house to watch these wrestling matches. So we were pretty much outdrawing all the independent promotions in California. And then it made the newspaper. Then I ended up on 2020 and then did a host of talk shows. And that actually got me into the offices of XPW, which was like a hardcore wrestling promotion that was trying to build on the ECW, you know, interest at the time. So I started off there. Then I went to Las Vegas and started training with Nick Bockwinkel, old school guy, and Jimmy Snuka. He was a pretty big star in the 80s. And Scott Casey, who's he's still around. He was a fairly big star in the 70s and 80s. And then from there, mostly stayed in California, but I did some trips, you know, around the country a little bit. And then I ended up signing a deal with MTV to do a TV show. And we did season 1 and the show got, they aired the first season, but then it got shelved because of some lawsuit, I guess. And I decided that was a good opportunity for me to jump from wrestling to law school. And so that's what I did.
So you started
much crazier job being a
was
lawyer.
it about high school, you said, when you started putting on these shows? Or
Oh, I actually started the backyard wrestling shows when I was in elementary school, but it was like in high school when we started doing like really crazy shit. I mean, when we were in like elementary school, it was just us having these legit fights in the backyard, and then the winner gets to hold up the cardboard wrestling belt. And then we started like staging them. We kind of figured out like it's actually the same track pro wrestling went, right? First it was a legit fight, and then people realized, well, if we start staging this stuff and pretending we're doing all this stuff, we'll draw more fans. And that's kind of what we did. So we started staging these wrestling matches and bleeding and all the crazy stuff that we were doing back then, jumping off the roofs onto each other. I watched some of that stuff. I'm not sure how I'm still walking, to be honest with you.
Is that real? Is that real blood, or is that?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you can see all the scars on my head still.
So you actually take like a razor and cut yourself?
When we were, that was after I became a pro wrestler and figured out you don't really need to use the cheese grater to get the blood going. Yeah, we didn't figure out the gigging thing until I became a pro. No, we were literally cutting each other with like, we'd find things that could draw blood with like the least amount of pain, and then we would cut each other with these things. We weren't very smart. But that's actually how I met Tony, because you know, when I was younger, I was real into the theatrics of pro wrestling. And then it was probably about 2002 or so. And that date could be wrong because Luthez passed away soon after I met him. But I went to the Cauliflower Alley convention in Las Vegas and I met Luthez. And I approached him because he was selling some books and I had him autograph one for me. And we ended up becoming really good friends. You know, I should say really good friends. We ended up hanging out that whole weekend. Like when we had meals together, it was a really good time. And he was telling me that if you really wanted to be a serious pro wrestler, you had to learn how to fight. You had to learn a legitimate martial arts. And so when I was picking his brain about that, I said, well, who do I go to if I really want to learn legit catch wrestling? And he said, there's only one person left that's going to be a true hooker after I and two other names that he mentioned had died, and all the people are dead now. And he said it's this guy Tony Cecchine in Chicago. So I didn't start training with him right away, but I kept that name down, and I started following him on the internet and started planning that one day I would touch bases with him. And soon I did. I did after a while. But Tony or Lou told me that there ain't many hookers left in this world, but Tony's one of them, and he's the only one that's really going to be able to teach you how to be a legitimate catch wrestler, a legitimate hooker. And in fact, I actually seen a video years later of him repeating that same statement. So that's actually how I hunted down and started stalking Tony, and I've been stalking him ever since.
Yeah, I got to get a lawyer, man. I gotta put a stop to this. Let's see. Perry Mason never lost the case, I don't think. Matlock might have. I don't follow that, but we're gonna have to find somebody.
You're getting old enough to start watching Matlock, actually. You're on schedule for that.
When Andre, now
Murder, She Wrote too. I think
let me just say something about Andre. Now, I've trained literally, tens of just thousands upon thousands if you factor in seminars and all of that stuff. But really, I've trained a lot of fighters, professional, amateurs, just average Joes, just big, strong, former NFL football players, you name it. Tough, this and that. But I've never met any human being that has the pain tolerance of Andre. Okay. Well, and I think, that backyard wrestling, that extreme wrestling, I don't know if that's the reason he got into it or his pain tolerance is so high because of that, but he does have a high pain tolerance. And I like that because, I can really show things without, somebody, tapping or screaming before, too long. So yeah, Andre, and he's gifted, and he had a great crew in LA. Man, I miss that, with the ring and just a bunch of people, male, female, didn't matter. We had fun.
Yeah, I was really trying to teach those guys to kind of respect and honor the roots of pro wrestling. And you remember Luke Perry's son that you used to? Yeah, he's actually at AEW now, one of the bigger wrestling promotions now. So he's on TV every week.
Yeah, nationally. Tell him I said hello. Yeah, I remember training him. Nice kid. He was working at an In-N-Out burger or something, whatever you call it out there.
A Polo Loco, I think it was.
Yeah, some place, just unassuming. But on that, let me just jump in here about you wanted to teach him the history and all that, but that extreme stuff, the way you guys are, carry yourself, like, death matches and you guys, those types really need to learn this stuff because you're going to find some jagoff that thinks he's tough, in the audience or wherever, and it's going to want to try you. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. That's why, you got to know how to fight. Whereas some wrestlers, they don't come off like that. They're just more, mellow or mild. But yeah, man, you had a very nice setup. Now, folks, Andre would fly me out to San Diego. That's where he was living at the time. And so I had been to California before, mainly Northern California, but I had been to Hollywood and Beverly Hills and did a couple, few seminars over there. And I've driven through in the past. I had driven through San Diego to go to Tijuana, which that's a classic story there. But anyway, what was neat was, so Andre drove us from his house in San Diego to LA, which was a couple hours at least, 2.5 hours, something.
2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's nice because you get to know the guy. I was staying with him and, you get, especially he was enrolled in the Tri-C program, which I want to get to know guys. So he had come out here to Chicago a few times and brought, his training partner and everything. And it was all cool, man. It was a good time, but I got to tell you, man, San Diego was difficult for me because it seems like it's like in a valley or something. You had all these hills and everything around you, and I could never quite get oriented there. But we didn't have a lot of time for socializing. But it's because, the 2-hour trek and back, that's 4 hours right there, plus working out. But I got to meet on one of the trips, I met his family, wonderful, wonderful people. His dad knows hell of a lot about cars, man. That's what he did for a living. But they're not, I think you should probably tell them, you're not native Californians.
No, I'm from Louisiana, the New Orleans area. Is that what you're referring to, or was
Yeah.
that one of your jokes?
No time for jokes when it you'll sue me.
I can never
No.
tell you, Tony.
All right. Well, they're coming because you bring the best out or the worst out of me. But no, people think Californian, you're talking about it. I know that those Californians are pretty serious about, is he a native?
Oh,
like native
yeah.
New Yorkers,
Yeah, I feel like I'm from California because I really identify with California, like as far as the politics, the way of thinking. But no, actually, my family is like deeply rooted in the New Orleans area and part of the Homa Indian Nation tribe, actually. And I heard that they were pretty crazy, so that may be where some of my uh, dumbest ideas came from. Um, but yeah, I think that the pain tolerance thing is an interesting subject because I used to like letting people punch me in the face.
we can tell.
Yeah, it's amazing that I can even do the job that I do today. And I don't mean like just for fun, like, hey, punch me in the face. But like when we get in fights, like I would make them punch me in the face. I'd make them take the first punch because it would never phase me. And then after that, they would get so scared. Then it was pretty easy to and I fought a lot. I fought a lot. I still fight sometimes. But that was always kind of a strategy of mine. To let them take the first shot. Now, I'm lucky that no one who actually knew what they were doing took the first shot because I've been laid out on the ground. But luckily, most of the people I got into a fight with didn't really know how to throw a proper punch. It's interesting because I always kind of wonder where that comes from, like pain tolerance. Because you have some people who, when you're trying to like train them, whether it be pro wrestling or whatever, it's like you almost get frustrated because as you start to work with them, it's like every little thing either hurts them or they need to take a break constantly and like settle their nerves. Whereas other people work through that. So where does that come from, Tony? Because you've trained a whole lot more people than I've trained.
Yeah. Well, first of all, there is a medical condition where, and you don't want to have this condition. It's very rare, but there are people out there who feel literally nothing, absolutely nothing. And you think that's, oh, wow. It's no good because you can burn yourself, not know it. You can break a leg and walk on it, not know it. A few years ago, I read about a little boy who was suffering from this, and he would have, these injuries and, he would never know because he was never in pain. But I think, like I got a good pain tolerance. At least I think I do. I think that to a degree, I think I was born with it. I mean, I don't remember doing anything, but maybe because with my coach, Rod Von roughing me up constantly or boxing at such a young age. Some of it is psychological. Let's put it this way. That's my point. So I think if you get exposed to pain early, you don't fear it. You come to accept it. Now, I'm not talking about getting like, massive, things, but then your body goes in shock over that. So yeah, most of the people scream, tap from shock or fear. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean shock like your body's going in shock, but just surprise.
Surprise out of
that you're right
in that pain. Yeah.
Yep. So and it's that fear of the unknown, well, look, here's a classic example. Like if you ever would go to like one of those haunted houses or something, all of a sudden somebody will jump out and startle you, man. You scream or whatever. No pain, nothing, but it was just something that you weren't expecting. You were anticipating what's going to happen because you're in a haunted house and boom, it happens. And I think that's what happens with a lot of training. People get, they get this, they feel this and they're like, oh shit, what's going to happen here? Is he going to break my arm? Is he going to break my leg? They scream. And ironically, without dropping names, I've had pro fighters, man, that, just didn't have that pain tolerance. But when you're in an actual fight, then, your adrenaline kicks in the gym. Many times your adrenaline does not kick in, or it does when you're first, let's say, meeting me or somebody that you're training with, you get nervous, but that passes. Right. And now you don't have the adrenaline.
Yeah. So, adrenaline's everything. That's everything.
It is.
I'll be walking through my house sometimes and I'll step on a thumbtack and I'll fall to the ground and like hold my foot. People are like, you fall on dozens of those at a time in wrestling matches. And I'm like, yeah, but the adrenaline. That's one thumbtack you're not expecting, it sucks.
I'm glad because I think I was good. I don't know if I ever did a video on that, but I was going to if I didn't, because that's exactly right. It's all about mental preparedness. you got to be prepared for it. Yeah, when you stub your toe or something, it comes out of the blue, and man, oh my God, it feels like the world's coming to an end. But yeah, you do have a high pain tolerance, and but then there's other guys that they don't really have that pain tolerance, but they're going to try to tough it out just to look good, and then they get hurt. And maybe not like I got to go to the hospital hurt, but they're messed up. So you kind of, it's a balancing act. You can't have that ego. You just have to find your groove. And for the people who are putting the holds on, don't try to hurt the person, don't like show off. Put it on enough that they realize you mean business and explain it. But yeah, we're in our own little world with that, because our stuff hurts more than people think. So you gotta be able to take it and give it and take it, I guess. But yeah, it's great to have you on, man. I miss I want to talk about California for a minute, because I think I mentioned this to Joe. I'm born and raised in the inner city of Cleveland, and it's born in the 60s, but really raised in 70s, really, when I was able to start understanding things. And back then you only had three major channels, three TV channels, and so all the shows seemed to either be California, sunny California, or New York shit, right?
Yeah.
So I could relate to New York.
That way still, pretty much?
Probably, but I always could relate to New York because Cleveland was just like it. But I could, this California thing, it's always sunny and manicured lawns and beautiful, happy families and blonde-headed women and all of this jazz, things that you just didn't see in my life. So I told Joe the other day, or somebody, if I could have been born all over again, I probably would have opted to be born in sunny Southern California more than anything else. I don't know why. But I think it would have just been a cool thing. My life obviously would have turned out differently, totally, but that's okay. But yeah, so I got a thing about California. Sadly, I don't think I've been there 10 times. And every time I've gone, it's just been, work.
Yeah.
So I've never really, and if I do get to go out, like I did in Beverly Hills, or you took me for pho and stuff and, all that, but it's a couple hours, you're out for 2 hours, and then you gotta sleep go to bed, because you gotta teach. So
well, when this COVID shit's over, we need to get you out here. We should get all three of you out here. We could do a podcast from Tijuana, and I can show you all around California.
I gotta get my what do you call it? My passport going again. Right now I can't leave because of my mom, but I'd have to make arrangements. But yeah, I have to get the passport. I should work on that. But what's the point? Because so more on Andre. So when I went out there again, he was like a gracious host, and it was like just nice. His clan that he had, his group of people that he trained, they were awesome. And that really makes a difference, because sometimes, if you have, and Andre can elaborate on this, you have one bad apple can ruin the bunch. And he did not have a bad apple in that bunch. Everybody was nice. And remember something, while these guys weren't professional fighters, they were hardcore. I mean, they did stuff that was, really in many ways much more severe, than what you'd see in, your traditional martial art venues. So talk about that a little bit, if you don't mind, about bad apples ruining the group.
Yeah.
Well, we need to get Nico out of here. I think that's what you're saying.
Nico's a good guy. Leave Nico alone.
Yeah, Joe.
No, but you're absolutely right about that. And because not only did I have the wrestling school where we brought you down for that, but I also ran wrestling shows. And a lot of people would remark about how when they worked our shows, how unified and the locker room, they would watch the show together and they would collaborate. And it wasn't like a lot of other locker rooms where people were broken up in cliques, or there was a lot of drama. And what I learned really quickly was that having people who don't agree with what, this could be in anything. Same thing in my law practice and anything else. Like, I don't care about how talented you are. If you become a resistant to whatever it is that we are trying to do, whether it be trained to be pro wrestlers, whether it be to put on wrestling shows, whether it be to protect people's rights and earn a living in a law profession. If you're not agreeing with the overall purpose and willing to support each other and make sure they're better and not be selfish, but be selfless and get better through exchanging knowledge, then you have no place here. And so I think you were there when one of the students kind of stepped out of line a little bit. And then I had to get in there and tell him, look, you need to go home for a week. You need to think about if you want to be here. You want to think about if you want to continue to follow the rules that we set out. Because when I meet with my guys, we set out rules. This is how we're going to train. This is we agree to that. It's not, I don't just say this is what you have to do. I tell them what I expect and I ask them what they expect, and we create a set of rules. And then if somebody steps out of that set of rules, then I have to step in and ask them, you know, if you want to be a part of what we're doing or not. Because you get one person who either starts bullying or in any way brings derision of any type, it ruins everything. What I've learned is when people are happy, when people are helping each other, when people have camaraderie, they do better, they learn more. And if people are trying to like hide their knowledge or don't really want to see their teammates succeed, then it brings everybody down. And that's one of the things I love about you, Tony, because a lot of times when you deal with the people who like really know their stuff, they don't really want to teach everything they know. They want to beat you up to impress you and then teach you as little as they can. Am I wrong about that? I mean, that's been my experience in different people that I've trained with here in California.
Generally speaking, yes, I will agree with you. And I can elaborate on that later because I have a whole thing about that and it pisses me off.
Yeah. Cause you know, you'll go to a Kung Fu school, for example. And I always like to try to go and bring these different people to my wrestling students and say, spend a day with my students and just teach them one or two things that they may be able to incorporate into their pro wrestling or may not. But I always try to ground my students' training into reality. So, you know, this is why I have no interest in modern pro wrestling, because the guys in pro wrestling today don't know anything about fighting. None of them are tough. Whereas, you know, the wrestling when I grew up, if you didn't have a legitimate wrestling background, you still had to be pretty tough to like get along. So I try to teach my guys, like, not only the history of professional wrestling, where it came from, but also how to actually be able to execute moves, the show holds and the legit holds. And so if I was to bring like a Kung Fu guy into the school, they would be like, oh, great, let me kick this guy in the face and throw this guy down and throw this guy down. But then when it got to teaching, they really weren't interested in revealing anything that they really knew. And so I would have to go out and find people who were not selfish with their knowledge. And so it's a two-part task. It's finding students that understand what it is you're trying to develop and want to be a part of that and willing to unselfishly give themselves to that cause, and then to also find trainers and people who are going to come in and want to see the students grow as whatever it is they're teaching, as fighters or as martial artists or as wrestlers. And it is a really hard thing to find. And so you know, going back to when I first met you, when Lou was telling me there's only one person left that I would consider a hooker once, you know, he and Billy Robinson pass on. You know, my concern was, okay, if there's only one person that has the ability to really teach this, are they going to keep that and let it die with them? Because if they do, this whole art dies with it.
Right.
And so I was really, really like happy when we got to know each other and talk, that you were just completely willing to divulge all your knowledge if the person was serious about learning it and being respectful with what they learned. And so, you know, well, I think that's why you and I immediately, I felt like we hit it off.
Yeah. Well, first of all, nowadays catch wrestling isn't what I teach. You know, it's, or what other people teach isn't catch wrestling. They label it that, but they've created like a sport that never existed before, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just it's a whole different thing. Not knocking it. It's just it's totally different.
It is totally different. Catch
yeah,
wrestling. When I talk about catch wrestling, I'm talking about the stuff that existed in the 1800s.
The hard shit. Well, now about sharing knowledge. Okay, first of all, let's be brutally frank here. 99 probably 0.9% of the people, they're not going to put in the effort to train. You know, it's not the technique that's going to win it for you. It's how well you mastered it. It's the thousands of reps, the hundreds and thousands of hours in the gym. Okay, that I can't do for you. So I could show you something, and that's what cracks me up. I'll do a seminar, and then maybe 6 months later, I would come back, and you could tell that, you know, the coach didn't know enough. These guys didn't know the moves. Oh, you know, I'm having a problem with your move. It doesn't seem to work. Well, yeah, because you don't even do it right. That's the beauty. Now I'm going to get sidetracked. That's the beautiful thing about the Tri-C program, because it's video. So, you know, back and forth. So I can make these corrections, not once every year or once every 6 months. That's why, you know, I'm hustling now. I'm going to put out another join the Tri-C program thing. We'll put a link to it after this video. But anyway, getting back to that.
Well, if you're going to put out a link for that, I'm just going to jump in here and say, if you are considering doing the Tri-C program and you live not in Chicago, because I envy Nico and Joe that you guys are there in Chicago. I did it remotely, and I can tell you, Tony does a fantastic job remotely of identifying what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and creating a customized plan right to you. I was like, and you know, we were doing this, you know, 5 years ago when I was really just, training harder with you. And nowadays it'd be even easier, because now it's like you even have phones that can do a lot of the stuff. I had to go buy a video camera and set it up, and
yeah. Now look, we have this. We have Zoom. And stuff.
I mean, now you could probably even do like a live demonstration if you're struggling with something. You can get there with them and say, "No, you're doing this wrong." But I was really impressed how, because when I first signed up, I was like, "Well, you know, we'll give this a try. I'm probably gonna have to go to Chicago to learn the real stuff." And I felt like the best stuff I learned was not coming to Chicago. It was that one-on-one instruction with you through videos being transferred through YouTube.
Well, thanks. Yeah. You know, but you made it, okay. Because you put in the time and effort, you know. Currently I have a father and son. They live in Canada. I won't mention their names. Wonderful people. They send me, you know, their videos. I get to it. I review, and, you know, I make a 20, sometimes 20-minute, 30-minute video for them, you know. But I tell you, getting off the Tri-C for a second, getting back to putting in the effort is so, I mean, that's the battle that no instructor can do for you. Okay. You have to do that. The instructor, or maybe somebody in your life, can, you know, get that, you know, flame going, right? Ignite that flame to make you want to have that desire. You know, that I can't do, you know. Well, maybe I can, but not intentionally. You know, if you're impressed or you like me, you want to study, fine. But somebody has to keep that motivation going. Now, you talk about this distance thing. I think it would be a great experiment if Joe would like move, just like leave, like go far, like Mongolia or something. Because I don't think I've ever trained anybody from Mongolia. Go, Joe, and then we can try that, you know. We'll do well. And you know what? People do these experiments like, here, we'll try this a few times. Let's do this right, Joe. Let's make this a long-term experiment. Does that mean Nico
has to push your car from now on?
That'll work, but that'll be fine.
Because that could be a fair trade. I could see the benefits of that.
Well, I want a 20-year program here. Let's make this long-term, you know. But yeah, Nico, they say I always pick on Nico because him and I are the only ones with, you know, that are really Italians here. Okay. Joe, with your nationality, multicultural background, which is good.
Hey, I'm an American. I'm a patriot.
It's Giuseppe, not Joe.
Yeah, right. Peppino. Hey, speaking of that, we're always looking for guests now and then, you know, and we have a few lined up, but it's come to my knowledge. I mean, it's come to my attention. We're not allowed to have any guests that have hair because it's a challenge to Joe. Okay, that's the big thing. Well, you think about it. Shoney Carter didn't have no hair. Nico's brother didn't have any hair. You know, Andre over here, you know, and we're going to have Paul Dodds coming on. Okay, he's not going to have any hair. Yeah, we had Javier and we had Brian, but they're only on because Joe's afraid of them. You know,
But they have other things that they're inferior with.
they
me,
know where Joe
so
lives.
It balances out.
I think he made Javier wear a hat though.
Yeah, right. I mean, because but we're pimping for Joe over here. Okay.
I wasn't going to bring it up because I was trying to be considerate of Andre's feelings. I mean, he may have physical pain tolerance, but doesn't man inside the man can't hurt, right?
Well, and that's one other thing. When he was talking about his training program, let's not forget, he said guys this and guys that. He had women present too. There was ladies there, and they were as hard as the guys. They worked as hard, and man, it was awesome. Good prop there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it, man.
My theory was if you love wrestling and you're willing to endure some pain and get on the mat and learn submissions, bring it on. I had girls that were training with us that could legitimately beat almost any guy that wasn't trained. I mean, it's one thing to put a woman and a man who are similarly trained together.
Yeah.
Biology doesn't work out there. But as far as like the girls that we were training, they got into a street fight, they can handle themselves. And they were very enthusiastic, Tony, when you came down, because as far as they were concerned, I was
I'm single,
and I don't know how that's the case either. But yeah, I mean, all my students were, but you remember Haley? She was like a rubber band.
I remember her. Yes, very well.
Yeah, when I was learning the submission wrestling, originally I could never tap her because she's like a goddamn rubber band. You can sit there and put her in a top wrist lock, and you can't get any tapping from her. And then when you taught me the twisting, I tapped her like that.
Yeah, and I'm glad
I don't care how limber you are. If you understand the twisting motions of the hooking or the submission hold that you're teaching, I mean, I had to turn her wrist 3 or 4 times, but I got her screaming eventually.
Well, that's the thing. Nobody else teaches it but me, and that's why Lou was, trying to get at with you the point that he was trying to make, and that's okay because different people. Have different styles, like boxers and wrestlers and whatever, judo, jiu-jitsu, they all have their own style. And mine incorporated it all. Mine was like a little bit too much for most people. It wasn't gentlemanly, right? Because it's rough and it's let's hurt. I want to hurt you. But that strictly comes from my upbringing. Yeah. So that's you could do it without going to that extreme like I did. But and let's hopefully you don't go as extreme as I do. But yeah, it's for me, I get enthused, when you have an audience, a group of people who are enthusiastic, who pay attention, who respect each other, that's an environment I want to be in. One of the things that really turns me off is like when you're doing a seminar and let's say you have a large group, so you show a technique, whatever it is, and then you let them go practice. Okay. So you explain it for, let's say 10 minutes, you let them practice for a few minutes, and you can see, I know right away who's the people I need to pay attention to and who are the people that aren't serious, because the ones who aren't serious, they'll work at it, they'll practice it 2 or 3 times, and then they're sitting there bullshitting with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
These are people who shouldn't be there. Okay. Because and those types tend to be the ones who brag the most. They run their mouth about, I studied, I did a seminar with this master and that master and grandmaster this and so on. Yeah, right. Lou, speaking of him, they used to have an expression called arena bunnies, right? Women that would just bounce around from arena to arena.
We call them ring rats now.
Ring rats. Well, he was more gentlemanly, I guess. But they had
well, it was the 40s and 50s,
right? But we martial art guys you got gym rats. You got people who'll bring out a list of I studied with this guy, that guy. I'm thinking, man alive. I mean, goodness gracious, you can't do it. I mean, can you imagine if you as a lawyer, right? If you ran into another lawyer who said, I don't know much about it, but who said, yeah, I studied at Harvard and Yale and Princeton and Texas and Michigan and Ohio State, and Northwestern, University of Chicago. You'd know, well, the guy's either total bullshitter or he's flunking out, or
flunking out of a lot of schools there.
Yeah, right. You can't, and that turns me off. That's not because number one, it doesn't show loyalty first and foremost, especially when the styles are similar. It's not like you're learning wrestling from somebody and a shotgun from somebody else. Okay, that's totally disparate. But it also doesn't. It shows that you don't have the dedication. Okay, you can't. You have to have an attention span here. Okay, in order to get good at anything, it takes utter dedication. Without it, you're not going to make it. So like and I mean that, and I don't care if it offends people. It's the facts. You look at any like two sport athletes. Okay, let's Bo Jackson, for example, Deion Sanders. Those two, probably took it to the highest level. But the funny thing is, right? During baseball season, they weren't playing football, man. They weren't practicing football. They weren't playing a day game baseball and then at night doing football drills. Okay, it didn't work that way. Okay, and those baseball's probably a little more skill oriented, hand-eye coordination and things like that. Football is a lot more physical, and you got to memorize your patterns and your plays and shit. But you can't be doing 5, 6, even 3, different martial arts at a high level. It's a recipe for disaster, man. It just is, all it's going to do is going to expose your weaknesses. And what I mean by that is you're going to enter into your area where you think you know something, the style that you know something, and you're probably not that good at it, and you can get exposed. Whereas if you know something very, very good, and you get taken out of it momentarily, you're fighting to get back to that. Like if you're a striker, you're a heavyweight champion of the world, boxer, something's happening in a fight, you want to get back to where you can box. Okay. You don't want to sit there and think, all right, well, I did 6 months of judo. Should I try to throw this guy? Or, I did 4 months of taekwondo. Should I try to spin kick? You know what I'm saying? Master something, show me the dedication to at least spend a few years and get to an accomplished level, man. Certificates, belts, forget about it. That don't mean shit to me.
Yeah. And I don't know this personally, but I feel like that's not really sure what the best technique is, right? If you're shopping around from one dojo to another martial arts school to another form of fighting, it's either you're just like poly-curious, you just want to know all this stuff, which is fine, or you don't have confidence in anything that you're learning. That's kind of like my perspective.
Well, let me interject though. It's not fair to the instructor or the school, no matter who it is, because they're not going to just come in here and show you everything they know right away or their best moves, because it takes time to acquire that, that ability. So you can't judge somebody by one video or you can see certain things. If you're skilled, you can see, well, this guy doesn't have the fundamentals. He doesn't know how to move right. But yeah, man, show some effort, like that seminar that they do with you or any seminar.
Yeah.
If it's a 3-hour seminar, 2-hour seminar, 4-hour seminar, or weekend seminar, I can't show you thousands of moves that I know. You don't have enough time.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's not just limited to fighting, but in anything. I rather when you're talking about if you want to be a fighter, I feel like you really need to become an expert in something. Like as a lawyer, I've become, someone comes to me and asks me about a workers' comp case or a family law case or a bazillion other cases. I tell them, I won't even talk to you about it. I don't know anything about it. I'm as knowledgeable. You're probably more knowledgeable than I am because you're going through a divorce and I've never been through one.
There's time.
There's time. Well, thanks for the encouragement. Speed along my first divorce, Tony.
I'm a realist. Okay.
Okay. So what I teach, like people who come to my law firm and say they want to work with me, and usually these are my law students, and I tell them we specialize in very specific things because I want to be the absolute best at what we do. For 6 or 7 years, all I did was criminal defense law. And when I felt like I really couldn't get any better at that, then I said, okay, what can I add in? And really it was just because I wanted something new. I wanted to learn to broaden myself. So then I got into suing police officers because it was like I was doing a lot of these resisting arrest cases and I was beating the cases. And then the civil lawyers would come take my case, use my same strategies, and then sue the county, make a ton of money. And I'm thinking, well, I might as well just learn the civil part and win the money as well. And so I think that's a natural expansion because you focus on one thing and you learn everything you can about it. And then when you really feel like you've tapped out your knowledge, then you add more to it. I was kind of surprised because I think it was when I went to Chicago that I realized that you're a boxer too. And
and I kick. I try to do it all, but I've had years to do it.
Yeah, exactly. You've had a lifetime to learn it all, but your techniques have really been, I mean, you've taken everything that you learned, but you've also kind of like melded it into something very unique because yours wasn't just a sport. It wasn't go to the YMCA and exchange, painful submissions for pleasure or for sport. Like you developed something that was intended to maim people when they needed to be maimed. And so it's really unique how you've melted boxing from as a stand-up fighting style to wrestling, because you in one instance it's like you're on your feet and you're throwing punches, but the blink of an eye you got the guy on the floor and you're ripping his limbs to pieces. And I don't know I know Danny Hodges did some a couple fights and he was certainly a really good wrestler, but he was never I don't think a sufficient boxer. I don't think he spent any amount of time trying to learn how to be a boxer. But I think that the way that you have melded those two together is quite remarkable, and actually is a very, very effective like dual martial arts. So if you're ever like in a street fight, you know how to absorb a punch, how to block a punch, how to dodge a punch, how to throw a punch. And then if you find out that the guy you're fighting is one of those unique people that probably, if I let them punch me, would knock me on my ass, then I know how to take that guy to the ground, because I know most people who can stand up and fight can't fight on the ground.
Well, for one, Danny Hodge did win the AAU Nationals Golden Gloves, and I think he had a couple pro fights, but still, it doesn't matter. You have to have a conscious desire to blend it. See, okay, it's like this. Like if you're watching a movie and all of a sudden there's like jitters in the movie, no matter how good the movie is, you see these jitters every so often in the film or the video, you can't really enjoy it. Well, that's how the fighting is. When you're mixing this up, it has to be seamless. And like I talked about this before, I don't ever think I'm in boxing mode, let's say, or kicking mode, or it's all one. It's completely seamless. And that's where like a lot of guys, I don't think have done that. There was a wrestler long before, I think in the 20s, Paul Berlenbach, who was an AAU national wrestling champ, who ended up becoming the light heavyweight boxing champion of the world. He wanted to make a living at it, and he did it, and he was a champ. But could he? I don't know if he blended the two. I mean, he died long before probably I was even born. But yeah, I just did it more or less out of necessity. I started boxing before wrestling, so
So when you trained with Stanley Robon, did you fight in a wrestling stance or a boxing stance?
I was in pain stance. Okay. I mean, I was like a pretzel. I was all like this. No, I mean, when you're talking about on the feet, there was a time in the beginning, he showed me how he wrestled. Okay. Like a wrestling stance.
Yeah.
Right. But this is the thing about the guy. He was very aware of that a traditional wrestling stance isn't going to cut it. Okay. Now he had gifts, with his strength that, none of us have. Okay. And he was in a concentration camp, so I'm not going to discuss that. But in general, life in general, outside of that concentration camp, let's get that out of the way. He wasn't raised in an environment like I was, at least from what I know, where his life was on the line damn near every day outside of the concentration camp. So he saw my skills and he right away said, don't give this up. Don't. This is good. Incorporate it. So, and I knew that, hey, I want to keep my hands up. I don't like this hands down stuff or leaning forward kind of thing, or whatever. I don't like that. Right? That just isn't comfortable to me.
Yeah, not in a fight for sure. You don't want to
not in a fight. No, but I gave him the respect of, okay, let me see where you're going with this. This is afterwards, because in the first few months he didn't show me anything, just conditioning exercises and so on. But when we got down to it, and it just piqued my mind because, and here's the beautiful thing. I was, when it was like straight grappling, forget about the submission holds. I was looking at, well, okay, I could have done this to him if I wanted to. Knee him, kick him, elbow, whatever, headbutt. I mean, I'm not saying I could have pulled it off. I was a kid. He was a grown man. But I'm just saying that was important. That was important because I never forgot those things, because I always remembered, you're vulnerable. If I try to do this, it may work in a straight wrestling situation, but in a street fight. So then anyway, as time went on with him, and not that much longer, I got into the ripping where he started showing me all this. Then I knew, okay, he may not be able to punch like me or kick, but he knew all about not leaving yourself wide open. Yeah. So, and that clicked, because then, I said, yeah, this is the way we need to go. He's like, I understand, because his whole goal was to teach me how to self-defense, because there was no sport of this. It never existed. So let's get that out. So anybody who's doing some sport aspect where you got rules and pinfalls, beautiful. That's not how it was. Okay. And that. Okay. Yeah. It was never like that. It was all, anytime it was anything like that was bullshit. It was, works. So, and he told me about how this goes back centuries and centuries and, thousands of years wrestling. And then, he was working out with a guy in Cleveland when he first moved there, Henry Gehrig, that was in one of Frank Gotch's books going back to he was like a middleweight or welterweight or light heavyweight wrestling champion of the world. And he tied up with Tom Jenkins, who was a legitimate guy. It did a lot of works with Gotch and all that, Frank Gotch. But, so I felt honored. And plus Stanley's European influence and stuff that he learned, because he traveled the world doing wrestling and strongman shows, South Africa or South America, everywhere. So I felt like, wow, this is kind of neat, for a kid who never left his street pretty much, except to go to school or go to see him. It was kind of like another world. It was like a vacation, right? But normally it turned out to be a vacation in hell because it hurt so much. I said it. Now I cried the first seemed like 6 months, because it just shit hurt, and my body wasn't, I was frail, skinny, and my body wasn't used to all of this kind of stuff. But even now I see guys have that transition problem. Great martial artists, but there's that hitch. Okay. They don't have that. There's a line of demarcation. You could see it's like falling off a cliff where, what do they do? Especially like if they're up against the fence. Okay. Or, a cage, in a UFC style event. What do I do? Should I, they're tying up with, are they resting? They don't know what they're doing. I mean, this is with a broad brush I'm painting. You could see that they're trying to figure things out. If that leg trip isn't working, if you can't get your hip in there to throw the guy or whatever, back off, man. Hit them, kick them, do whatever. And you can just see them mentally, some of them mentally struggling here. Like they're locked into like grappling mode now. Where, and again, I'm not saying every one of them. I'm sure there's guys who don't. But generally, you can't have that, man. You can't have those blank out spaces. It's got to be fluid, like you with the law. You can't go up in front of a judge. I'm not trying to be funny, but you can't go up in front of a judge and say, Judge, I want to object. Just give me a couple of minutes here. I'll figure out the reason why I want to object. Right? I can't do that shit. Well, you got to be like instant.
Yeah, I teach evidence in my class. I tell the students all that. You can't go like, hey, let me grab my evidence book and look at what the objection is. Yeah, you got to know it.
You got to know it.
If you're going to be a practitioner, you got to know it.
Yeah, and so that was all my thing, because with me, I couldn't hesitate in a real life situation, because I wish that people could understand the environment that I was raised in. There are pockets like that still around that, you wonder why there's shootings and killings and all this. It's a way of life and death for many of us that were born in the inner city and couldn't get out. I finally got out when I was 23 years old, but I'd gone through a lot of turmoil. I still have, flashbacks of this shit.
Mhm.
I remember talking to a medical expert once, and he didn't follow me. I said, I was in Vietnam for 23 years. He's like, what? You're overseas? No. I said, every day was a war zone for me, literally. Bullets, this and that. I mean, you never could rest. You never knew when it was going to happen to me, to my family, to my neighbors, whatever. So it's made me like, I'm like this all the time. I'm hyper alert is what I'm called. Okay. My mind doesn't shut down. But not everybody should be like me. You don't have to learn to kill with your bare hands. It's good that I'm able to. A lot of people, aren't. But, I got it if I need it. And that always helped me, Andre. I knew that I could, whoever wants to get in front of me, they don't realize what they're doing here, the trouble they're in right now. Okay. And that with me gave, because I had a strong background in ethics and honesty and care. If I didn't have those things, I'd have been in prison probably for killing people, so these people are lucky that I didn't snap.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I was going to say also, sometimes it's the knowledge that you can do those things that gives you the confidence to stop confrontations, because there's been situations where, for years we traveled in groups, like me and my students when we did shows and stuff. And if I was out doing something, I'd come up and I'd see a competition taking place, me stepping in there and being like, you want to fight, you're going to fight me, or you can turn around and walk away. And I don't look all that menacing, but it's that look in your eyes. It's that body. It's the confidence knowing that I believe that I can handle this situation. And so now it's either something's going to go down or this is not going to happen. And we need to go to our separate corners.
Well, I want to tell you guys a quick story here, but yeah, I always get people, I laugh it off, right? Yeah, you're right. Well, a quick one. Then I want to get to my main story. So I knew this guy named Gino, who was actually Rocky Marciano's driver and bodyguard. Okay. Gino was here in Chicago, and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, Gino said he took Rocky out. They were somewhere. This is years ago. Obviously, Rocky died, I believe, 1969. And there was just some asshole saying, you're not so tough. Now, this is after he was champ. This was in the 60s. I could take you. And, Rocky Marciano said, you're right. He says, I know you can't. I'm not a fighter. I mean, I'm a boxer. Okay. I don't, you win, man. I don't want to get into it. That's how Rocky handled it. I mean, Rocky could have killed this man, and that's how sometimes I'm like that. I'll just, okay, yeah, all right, goodbye. I'll leave you alone. But sometimes I can't. But here's the thing. About 9 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that, I went back to Cleveland. I took a friend of mine from Chicago and I showed him I won't tell you the whole story because it's too long, but his eyes were open to how bad Cleveland is, my area. It's worse than, Inglewood here in Chicago. It's worse. Anyway, long story short, I'm with my best buddy from high school, and we're at this big bar where I used to shoot pool at in Euclid, Ohio. And so I'm waiting to shoot pool or hanging out and all this. I'm with my buddy and from Chicago and my buddy from Cleveland and another friend from Cleveland. And there's some guy from Cleveland, and he's just, talking shit, to me, and I'm laughing, he's telling me what he's going to do and all this. And he got to the point where he said enough, and he crossed the line with me. And I don't know if I bowed up, if I had a look on my face, but my boy from Cleveland, Adrian stepped up to the guy and says, let me tell you something about Tone. He goes, you know where Tony's from? Guy goes, I don't give a shit where the hell he's from. He goes, he's from 79th St. Clair. With that, this dude was like, oh shit. He apologizing, buying drinks, buying me and my buddy drinks from Chicago, buying Adrian drinks, and not just one drink. He bought like 3-4 rounds, and if we finally, he wouldn't accept any money, wouldn't let us buy it back just because of the street cred. So sometimes, like you said, you have that menacing look. Well, with me, it was this dude Tony is for real.
Yeah.
They don't care about tough. Everybody thinks they can beat you, but when he knows where I'm from, now he's thinking he ain't gonna beat me. He's gonna kill me. This guy Tony's he's going to. My life's over. So when you get somebody like that, when it finally sinks in that it's all over for them, that this is your last day on earth, yeah, a lot of times they'll back down. Now some still won't, but those guys have mental issues, and you got to deal with it appropriately. But oh yeah, you and I could probably talk on and on and on about stories about that kind of stuff. Lots, street situations and tough guy stories, and it's always the biggest guy and the smallest guy that seem to get picked on, but it's also the guys who are legitimate tough guys. There's always somebody that thinks they can take you, especially if they've been drinking or they're on something. And you just have to, you have to deal with it. It's my problem is, even as I'm old and I still get it, I'm like, Jesus, I told one kid like this a couple years ago, like this was like before the COVID. I'm like, I said, well, first of all, I'm going to probably end up bitch slapping you after I get done saying this to him. And I said, but I could be like probably your father or maybe even older than your father. I said, so what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to do something that your dad should have probably done. I'm going to tie you up like a little bitch. I'm going to put your pants down in public here, and I'm going to spank you, literally spank you, okay? Like the child that you are right now. And then the owner of the place, came in and, or he was there, but, came in between us because the guy knew that I was serious now. Pulled him off to the side and says, don't talk to Tony, man.
Yeah.
And I guess, he told him who I was and what I do and this and that. And that was another one. Oh man, they had food there. He said, can I buy you a hamburger or something? I said, no. I said, just be thankful that, I didn't go off on you.
Yeah.
You go with this. I said, if I didn't know how to fight and I was packing, I probably would have blew your head off. So, lucky. But yeah, this is the thing with Joe. Now he gets mobbed. Joe should hire me to be his bodyguard because Joe, with his looks and how he gets mobbed when he goes out in public, and I've seen it. I've seen what happened, to him at times. One time we were down by Buckingham Fountain, and there was like 20, 30 women just surrounding him and grabbing him and ripping at him and clawing, and I'm screaming at him, Joe, do you need my help? And he's like, no.
That may be true, Tony, but in all these years, you've never once offered to spank me.
Do you really want to go there? Because I will. No, this kid was a kid. He was 21. I mean, come on, and I didn't want to hurt the kid and break him up and shit and knock him out or something. So a lot of intimidation, but I could back it up. That's the beautiful thing.
Tony. You're nicer than I am.
Well, I don't want to go to jail. I got to take care of my mother, man. I go to jail and I'm not getting out with my background. What I do is you're done. Felony, and I don't need that. But, the most important thing though, is that whatever anybody listening out there thinks their skill level is, and, just make sure what you're doing, because if you have any training, even accidentally, if you're a big guy, you can hit somebody, they can fall, hit their head. It happens commonly and they die. This just happened how long ago? Like a month ago to that famous private detective out on I think he was in California, and he got mugged in, his head, and he's dead. That can happen, man. It's bad. You got to watch. So you got to take, this is serious shit. Either you could kill somebody or you could get killed. You got to be prepared for it.
So getting back to intimidation, Andre, did somebody like teach you how to talk smack for pro wrestling, or is that actually a skill you guys teach?
Yeah. I mean, you go through what they call promo training, where they put you in the ring and they give you 2 minutes to try to cut a promo on somebody. Almost everybody, there's a few people come in, able to talk just because they know how to talk smack from the streets. But, for me, certainly it was something that I had to pick up. But, we always tell people when you're in the bathroom, taking a shower, cut a promo. When you look in the mirror, cut a promo. And I'll still do it just instinctively. I'll be in the bathroom, brushing my teeth or something, and I'll just start fucking cutting a promo myself.
So what's the technique for doing that, for the promo? You just call somebody out and start calling them names.
Can we get an example, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, like the old school of old school wrestling was always built around the concept that personal conflicts make money, right? So when you cut a promo against a particular person, what you want to try to do is, like, because typically you only have about, when you're doing TV, 90 seconds to get this message over. So what you want to do is summarize, basically identify who you're talking about. First of all, tell them who you are, identify who you're talking about, tell them why you're mad at them, and then tell them what you're going to do about it. And what you're going to do about it is always, this Saturday night at this arena, you and me one-on-one, we're going to settle the score. And the idea is that people say, okay, now I care, because he told them who he was. He told them why he was mad at him. And then he said what he was going to do about it. And what he's going to do about it, he's going to kick his ass this Saturday night. And then the other guy comes on and he does the same thing. And now we have a match. And then it depends if you're the heel or the baby face. Because the baby face always wants to call out for help. Like, my biggest challenge ever is going to be this Saturday night. And this person, he doesn't play by rules. He doesn't care about hurting people. All he cares about is winning. And I can't do it without the support of my fans. So I need you all there this Saturday night to support me, to back me up. Because if things get rough, I can look at the audience and I can see all of you, and you will give me the strength I need to carry the day. So it's that playing to the emotion. I haven't done it in a long time. Actually, I haven't been in a wrestling ring for 4 years now, 3 or 4 years now. It's been a while.
Well, I got a question for you.
Okay.
You mentioned Nick Bockwinkel. Now he comes from his father was a wrestler.
Yeah, he was.
So tell us
out of California, in fact, or he spent some time in California.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but But tell us, because Nick was a legend, really.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing about Nick Bockwinkel was he loved pro wrestling. And, even, when I was training with him, which was the early 2000s, is the same general area, about 2002, 2003, he was still really, really protective of the business. And so, most of the conversations I had with Nick was about like this disappointment of like where wrestling was going, how wrestlers were treating the business. Like, he used to get so infuriated when he'd come to the shows and he'd see wrestlers in the parking lot talking to fans. Like, especially if it's the two guys that are supposed to fight that night, they'll be in the parking lot sometimes going over their matches. And you see this all the time now. And there's no perception anymore that anyone's mad at each other. There's no perception anymore that anyone cares about winning the big title to make the big payoff. But Bockwinkel came from a time when you didn't even tell your spouse that wrestling was a work until sometimes you were married for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. He came from an era where you didn't clue your parents in many times, or your children in many times, that wrestling was a work. And so, and Tony, you probably understand this too. I'm sure you've had similar conversations with Lou or other guys in the business. Tony, you told me that Rod Vaughn told you never not to be a pro wrestler, right?
Correct.
And my guess is because by that point he probably, I don't know if he followed wrestling, but probably had similar misgivings about how like the wrestling went from something that mimicked a sport to something that mimicked a cartoon, so to speak.
Correct.
Would you agree with that?
Yes, correct. And one of his biggest pet peeves was, he liked Lou Thez, but that's pretty much it. He's like, these guys don't have skill. He says, these guys that think they do, they think they know, they don't know. And he just, like you said earlier, so many of them are just performers, right?
Mhm.
And we're talking now the 70s, late 70s,
Yeah, I was gonna say,
early
not
80s. Yeah,
way
this is
worse.
when I got into it, 79 with him. Or 77, I should say, because I was born in 64. 77 is when I started it. I was 13. So the thing here is, he didn't, he didn't want me to get into it. He knew that there was, let's say, drugs and everything, and he wanted me
Yeah.
to make a living, just an honest. And he said, you're too good. You don't fake it. You're the real deal. You're not going to cut it. Now, remember too, I wasn't a big dude, back then. I graduated high school 178 pounds. So, I wasn't built like I became, then I might've been marketable. But
Yeah.
the point though, there were a lot of old timers now that people that are past, that people look back on with, like, they reflect with, oh my God, he probably was so tough. He could do this or that. When really they, most of them weren't. They may have known a few holds just
Yeah.
because you do, it's like you work in an Italian restaurant, you may be German or Scotch Irish, but you know a couple of words in Italian. You know, they, but now they're some of these guys are glorified, and they're,
Mhm.
boy, he must have been something. No, well, I mean, there were some tough guys in wrestling. Don't get me wrong. There were a few, but now you read stuff. It's like every one of them was a killer. No, that's not true. That's very not true.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I think that that's, if you research enough, like when I was talking to Luth, there's a lot of things that he told me were also in his book. And if you look at a lot of the books of the guys, like Harley Race is a tough guy,
Yes,
but
he was.
I don't think he was a shooter, or I don't think he claimed to be. I mean, he came from the carnival days where you had to know how to hurt somebody if things got out of control. And so, his big thing was he just headbutt you in the nose because that ends
Right.
fights.
Yeah,
Do you
but
think?
he was tough. He was a
Yeah.
shooter in that regard. Like, he can go live on you if you wanted to, but
Oh
not.
yeah, yeah.
He wasn't a submission guy, per
Yeah,
se.
that's what I meant. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, he was, him and Haku was another guy who was like really regarded as being a tough guy. He may not put you on the ground and put you in submission hold, but he was a tough guy. Now, I don't know how tough those guys would be if you actually were able to get them on the ground, but these are guys who were notorious for finishing fights before they ever got that far. Do you think that it would have been different for you if you, were born 20 years earlier and
Yeah,
learned
20,
everything
30
you learned?
years.
You think
Yeah,
you would have been a pro wrestler?
I mean, if I would have been the policeman for sure in the wrestling world, yeah, I might have been. If let's say if I was 18 in the 50s, yeah, I probably could have been. Yeah, because I had athleticism. Looking back, I had a, if this is like a what if, but with my speed and stuff and the knowledge, yeah, I probably could have done something, but you guys wouldn't have seen it. I mean, I don't think even then my style of fighting would have, sold. You got my drift?
No, yeah, you would definitely have to modify it, but
Yeah.
it just seems like in that era, um, for them to let you in the door, you had to know something, and it was like,
Yeah.
how far you went. I mean, this is not across the board, but how far you went seemed to be usually related to how good you could do at the gym. Because when they're at the gym, they're going live. And so, like, Luthez was the champion because everyone knew that, if you needed a safe place to put the title, put it on Luthez because no one's going to cross them and take the belt. Or if someone wasn't cooperating, you send Luthez in to take the title from the guy. And so they seem to really try to keep people who are legit at the top of the cards, when they had the whole package.
Yeah, he was marketable. See, Luthez had the looks. He had the body. He was a rare combination of a guy who had the looks, the physique, and and could back it up. Vern Gagne, Danny Hodge. They had the goods. They had the look. There was others who had the looks and didn't have skill later on. But even in Lou's era, there were guys who had the goods. They could wrestle. Some of them were pretty tough, but they just weren't marketable, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and those were the policemen. Those were the people who were making sure that no one got out of line. So and You know, one of the guys, this is the only time I've ever disagreed with Lou Thez, and not 100%, because Lou Thez used to always talk about Buddy Rogers not knowing anything. He's like, that guy didn't know anything about wrestling. And I don't think that Buddy Rogers was a shooter by any means, but he did seem to be fairly efficient, at least as a grappler. Do you have any insight on that?
Well, he wasn't a shooter, definitely wasn't a hooker or anything like that. But yeah, I think you're right. He had a good athleticism. And I think back in his day, he tangled with enough guys that, you just pick things up, but I think there was some heat going on. Lou, I guess I can say it now, but two of the biggest guys that Lou just detested. Well, three now. I got a Toots Mondt, who was actually a guy you didn't want to cross. Toots knew. John Pesek, who was another great wrestler, and Lou had problems with him. But in Lou's era, more or less, was Buddy Rogers and Antonio Rocca. Okay, because these were like really like flamboyant, but in a different, like serious flamboyant, not like Gorgeous George, right? Gorgeous George was funny. And Lou always said he had a strong amateur background. George Wagner, I think his name was. He could wrestle.
Yeah.
But yeah, for some reason, I think Lou's problem was that they gave the belt to Buddy Rogers. And I could be wrong, but I'm going on my memory. Lou said this is like really the first time they put over and gave a belt to a guy who could get his ass kicked in the parking lot. Okay. Not temporarily either. They were pushing him.
And they made Lou Thez drop the belt to him too. So I'm sure that he wasn't too happy about that.
No, probably not. I don't know all of the details, because for me, all I cared about, and I knew what phase in life Lou was at, age wise, and he had mellowed tremendously. But I wanted to pick his brain more for just techniques and how to setups and stories along those lines. And it's quite eye-opening, really. Some would be shocking, both good and bad. There's stories about guys who thought they were, you would think they were tough, they weren't, and guys who have a legendary reputation and they were 100% workers. Okay, but nobody knows that. But that's our secrets, our chosen few secrets, because I'm not going to denigrate, and then people are going to say, oh, prove it. Well, how are you going to prove something happened 80, 90 years ago? No, I trust the words of my coaches. Okay. They would not lie to me about this stuff that doesn't matter. These people, some of them were dead 30 years ago, but yeah, to me, I still laughed at all of it, because tough guy one-on-one fight, it don't matter. That to me is that's a walk in the park, compared to what I went through. Like once when I was with Leon Spinks, we used to live together basically, and I was driving and he was in a car, and I asked him once, he's from, I believe it was East St. Louis. He just recently passed away, sad. But he was like, I said, well, how good of a street fighter were you? He put it the best. He gave the best answer I've ever heard in my life. He's in my passenger seat. I said, Leon, how good of a street fighter were you? And he goes, I don't know. It never was a fair fight. And I loved it. I mean, I said, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. And this was before he was a heavyweight champ, probably even before he was an Olympian. Right. He had the reputation. It was never a fair fight.
Mm-hmm.
So when you hear about wrestling, generally like wrestling tough, 99% of the time, it's like a fair fight. It's one-on-one. It's in the locker room, or they shoot on each other in the ring. No, that just shows maybe that you're skilled. It doesn't show me really what you know when all the chips are down. Mentally, psychologically, how versatile are you? Like Haku, he has a legendary reputation. And, he's actually said some of it's not true. And some of it, like plucking the guy's eyeball out, I guess turned out to not be true, because the wrestler that it happened to didn't lose an eyeball, doesn't mean that Haku wasn't tough. But when you hear the stories, they're over the top and they're always changing.
Yeah. And eye gouging was a big thing in, in wrestling locker rooms or fights,
Oh yeah.
in that era. And so, you know how that's not just wrestling, that's everywhere. Some guy sees a fight and the guy thumbs him in the eye, and then 3 years later, I watched him rip a guy's eyeball out.
Yeah.
And so
it's a good technique to know.
My dad used to grab me like that, like behind the ear and on the eye when I was little, and I hated that. Never did pick that one up.
Well, thank God he stopped, because if it would have went any further, I don't know if you could ever have seen eye to eye with him again, But yeah, that to me, so I'm a hard sell. Okay. I that's why I said it before. I'm not impressed with most people because, okay, you're skilled at what you do, but there's so much more you haven't seen, just like with music. I mean, there's probably people out there that none of us have ever heard of that are doing, like when Charlie Parker came around, he ended up, with the bebop being at the cutting edge with some of the other guys with that bebop, a whole different style of music that had never been heard before. Right. And, there's fighting like the style that what I do or shared with you and a few others that no one's seen. It's not out there. It's not marketable. You cannot get it anywhere else, and it's a shame that it's going to die with me, but hey, you know what? Probably somebody 400 years ago did something so great somewhere on this planet. Maybe he was the best looking guy or the funniest guy or the strongest guy or the nicest guy, and nobody remembers him, man. Time marches on, and that's just the way it is. That's just how I take it. There may have been people out there that were really awesome at stuff. We'll never know. So at least now we have like recorded history here. So that you have that, but we're living in a time of revisionist history. So
yeah,
who knows, right? I got shit that I put out on a Lost Art of Hooking in the 90s. People are doing it now, claiming they invented it just now. No, this stuff's been around. I put it out 20 years ago. Some of it's been around for 20 centuries. That's what's the interesting part. So I gave up trying to convert these people. I actually feel bad for the few that really do want to learn it, and unless they reach out to me, they're not going to get it. You can't take bits and pieces, watch a clip on YouTube here and there. You've got to immerse yourself in it, and you've got to dedicate time, like you with the law. It took years to, it takes years to get through law school. Why do people think that they can learn to fight, to defend the most important thing in the world, their life? Why do they think they can learn it in a weekend?
Yeah, in a weekend
6 months
set,
or a year? Yeah. I mean, I know assholes that were, given certifications. You were level 1 certified in their style after a weekend seminar. I mean, they should be shut down for doing stuff like that.
I think the problem that people don't really think about is, okay, so let's, not that it's necessarily true, but let's say in 1 weekend you could teach somebody one move that's crippling. Let's call the double wrist lock, right?
Yeah.
The hooking style of it rips your arm out. So let's say we spend 12 hours on a weekend and we study that one hold and you master it. Okay. How are you going to get it on?
Yeah.
And that's what people don't even think about. It's like it's not necessarily takes years to perfect a move, but to learn the ability to get people from the position where they're attacking you to be able to use the things that you've learned. That's the parts that people don't study. It's like you go to a seminar and they say, oh, well, I'm going to teach you 3 ways to protect yourself. Okay, well, if they block the first one, how are you going to get to the second one?
Yeah.
They don't think about that. And so that's what, like, I think that why it's important to dedicate the years, because it's not just learning moves, it's learning how to win the position, to be able to control somebody, and then to put them into the position you need to finish the fight. That does not come
in a weekend.
Easily. Yeah.
No, I met a guy who took a weekend shooting pool, took a weekend course with some guy, excellent instructor. The instructor was very good player, top 50 maybe in the country, Fargo rate. And, but this guy was, and his instruction was amazing. Spent like, 25 hours or something over the course of a weekend. Well, it's pool, so you can do it. It's not like hard work like what we do. But anyway, the guy was anxious to get on the pool table. I didn't even play him. I was just watching him. He was getting blown out by everybody. All right. I mean, yeah, he learned a lot, but okay, now it's going to take you X amount of months or years to put all that knowledge together. And then that's just a small portion.
Yeah.
There's a bigger picture here. You can't cram it in. It's like going to a buffet. You can't eat, well, maybe Joe can, but you can't eat everything on the buffet, all the quantities and stuff. Joe won't do it because of his looks. Joe, you want me to say it, Joe? Because you say it yourself. You were talking about, doing every time you look in the mirror and you give your spiel. That's Joe. Hi, I'm Joe Cardinal. I'm beautiful. Wow. I'm going to be late for work, but I got to look at the mirror, man. God, I'm beautiful.
Well,
That's Joe's thing.
I take your lessons to heart. You've got to put the work in. You've got to
Put the work in.
Right? It's that positive reinforcement, Joe.
You've got to live it. You've got to be immersed in it. Whether it's grappling or personal beauty. You have that, you can't just be jumping around and focused on all kinds of different things. You've got to find your thing and focus on it to be great. So,
and Joe's trying to learn how to get the people into it. He needs to be able to get them excited so they'll come down Saturday night and support him and give them the extra strength he needs.
Tonight, this Saturday, I'm washing my hair.
And I can't do it without your support, so be there. But socially distant.
Yes. No, Joe is a great.
Any of you guys contracted the COVID?
My friend did. Oh, by the way, my friend Scott is with his hip replacement. He mandatory 2 more weeks or 2 weeks of more lockdown. No, I did not catch COVID, thankfully, but I know people who have passed away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend Scott caught it, and his father caught it from Scott, and his father is 89 years old. Scott caught the COVID pneumonia, post-COVID, whatever it is. And he's struggling, but he fell and broke his hip, and now he's in rehab for his hip. He had his hip replaced last week. So and they couldn't let him go home. I don't, but regardless, whatever it is that you have, you gotta put all your effort into anything. Sickness may hinder you physically.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully it won't hinder you mentally. So you work on your mental aspects of it. If your mental aspects aren't there because of concentration issues or memory problems or, brain injuries, then, it may not work out for you, so the mind is really got to try to keep it sharp and got to really try to protect your head, man, protect that brain. I wish I would have known more about that years ago. I wouldn't have had the issues that I have with it if the world knew. But my one doctor was the same doctor that Muhammad Ali had, and Brian didn't invent him, and I'm pretty sure, and he told me back then, this was in 2003 or 2002, people won't start paying attention to brain injuries until it starts happening in football or soccer or something. Boy, was he prophetic. Yeah. He was 100% right. But, he was from Atlanta. He worked with some wrestlers down there too, I think. But he had come up to Illinois. This wasn't actually, I wasn't in a hospital here. I was in a hospital in Springfield, Illinois, for the last time because they had to take me off of off the train because I had a medical issue. So and I had known about it previous to that in 1993. So I mean, it was just like, wow, and I was young. I'm like,
about the concussions in '93.
Yeah, I had an aneurysm. Yeah, but the concussions and all of that, and I had post-concussion syndrome and all that, many concussions, and it just, you have a lot of issues. And it affects people differently. Some, they slur their speech.
Mm-hmm.
Others, you have the memory, like with me, or my hands shake a little. It's all because of that. You don't know where it's going to go, but it's probably what they call CTE. Who knows? Chronic traumatic encephalopathy. They only know that post-mortem, but like a lot of football players are being diagnosed with that. A lot of pro wrestlers had it. You have the bumps, that you take, and like with just overall, we like you put yourself through a lot of hard shit. I hope you're going to be okay. Now
I
you're
hope
young.
so.
Well, I hope so
I watched
too.
those videos now when I was like 19, getting hit in the head with steel, like legit steel chairs, as hard as we thought it was. It was awesome if a guy could swing a chair at someone, break the chair in one hit. And I look at those videos now. And knowing what we know about concussions, it's because I knew I had concussions because I lost memory. Like I would be at a wrestling show, and next thing I know, be at home. And I was doing it at a really young age. Luckily, probably by the age of 23, 24, we started to learn about concussions. And I thought, oh, maybe I won't be getting hit in the head 3 or 4 times a match with a chair. And I think a lot of the wrestlers that were wrestling professionally in like 95 in that era, doing a lot of that stuff, you see the Japanese wrestlers who are getting cracked in the head with 5 or 6 different chairs in a mat.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that no one believes it. Everyone's like, that's just a fake chair. And so it
that's
makes
what I
you
always
wonder.
thought. I always thought it was like some kind of like a, thin aluminum or something that bends real easy.
Nico, my trainer was Supreme. He was my pro wrestling trainer, and he was a tough guy, and he actually just passed away this year. And he would make us go out to Home Depot and buy the thickest chairs that we could find. He wouldn't, I mean, if it was just a regular thin chair, he wouldn't use it. He'd go out. There was these specific chairs we had to buy from Costco. They'd be 4 in a box, and they were thick. I mean, you had to swing those things really, really hard to get them to dent, and they would beat each other over the head with those things. And that's the part that always made me feel the most strange, because we are in there, at least the SoCal wrestling crew, trying to make everything real and dangerous. And, we were breaking bottles over each other's heads. Supreme would only use the Heineken bottles because they were harder to break. Because I was always like, well, let's use the Corona ones. They're thinner. No. You got to use the Heineken ones. And no one believed any of it. They all thought it was fake glass, fake chairs, fake barbed wire. And I take my shirt off and my arms are scarred up with, the aftermath of all that.
I dated a lot of women like that, man. Just fake. It was all, oh, wasn't that great? It was fake. I didn't know it, but yeah,
You got to stay away from those Japanese wrestlers, women wrestlers.
Hey, Andre, what's the like some of the craziest stunts you've done?
Well, the one I did on MTV, because I'm not a huge fan of heights, and you can probably see it on YouTube, where I was thrown by this wrestler named Ricky Medeiros from like the top of we were filming that show at the Desi Arnaz studio in Burbank, and they stacked these they look like those box cars they put on the back of semi trucks, but they were bigger. And they stacked them 3 or 4 high. And who's that? There was the Good Charlotte was playing, because it was MTV. The way they would do the show was a band would play like half a song when the show started, and then they would go do commentary, and then the show would happen, and then I think they would play out the show, if I recall. And they had stacked these like 5 or 6 tables up next to one of the edges of the building, and then the plan was that I was going to get thrown off the top of it and go through the table. So I went up there and I positioned the tables where I wanted them to be, and then I'll go backstage and start the show. Now the show's to the shock and dismay of the people that are filming the show, who wanted us to do each match 4 or 5 times so they can get different angles. We're like, no, this is like boxing. It happens once, you shoot it, you miss it, you're fucked. So we go back there, they're shooting the show. I come out to do the part, and I get up there, and Ricky Medeiros tells me in his broken English, they moved the tables. And I'm like, what? And he's like, he moved the tables, look, and he punched me and like threw me to the floor, and I roll around. I'm like, holy shit. So I had the tables like pretty close to the edge, so I could just kind of fall over the edge. I guess they had pushed them out because something to do with filming the band. They were in the way, so they pushed them out about 4 feet. So he's like, what are we gonna do? And I'm like, throw me. Let's hope I get them. So he goes for the spot, and you could see it on the video where he kind of grabs me and kind of pauses, like he doesn't want to do it. So I was like, fuck it. I kind of threw myself, and I hit the first table. I think I kind of hit the second table, and then I hit the ground.
Oh,
and
Man.
that was the only time in wrestling that I ever knocked the wind out of myself, and I literally couldn't breathe. And then I had the pieces of the wood that I hit from the table fell down and hit me on the face. So I had blood coming out of my face, and which isn't new, but it was because a table hit me and cracked my face open.
I believe you showed me that clip when I was at your house.
Yeah, I probably did.
Yeah.
And then luckily, because I was like literally unable to breathe. I mean, it had to be more than 20 feet, and I barely caught two of the tables coming down. And they put the oxygen mask on me, and it was like that's the only time I've ever had an oxygen mask on my face. I was able to catch my breath. And after that, I was okay, even though I was walking kind of was odd. But then they put me in this room, and I'd never heard of Good Charlotte before. And these guys come in, these like twins, and they're like, "That was so awesome! I can't believe that. You're my favorite wrestler now." And I looked at my promoter. I'm like, "Can you get these fucking marks out of here? Who are these guys?" And everyone later was like talking about how like Andre threw Good Charlotte out of the. I was like, "Who?" I just thought that they were fans. I didn't realize that they were like performers or anything. So that was probably like as far as before I did it, realizing if something went bad, it probably wouldn't go over well. That was it. It probably isn't the thing that the fans, like people who were there, saw as being the most crazy thing.
did you break bones on that one?
Not that I'm aware of, no. In fact, I wrestled, I want to say 2 days later, because we were doing the whole season in like 10 days. So we were filming shows in the morning and the afternoon. And that taping was an evening taping, if I recall. And then the next day I was off. The next morning I had to wrestle. And I was really, really having a hard time walking. And so the guy I was working, he works for AEW now too, Scorpio Sky. I went to him and I was like, I think that you need to work my back, because there's just no way I'm going to be able to not make it known that my back really hurts. So he says, okay. So our plan was I'll slide in the ring, and you just start kicking the shit out of my back and back breakers and everything. And it seems like something you wouldn't want to do, right? But the thing is that if I can't bump without being excruciating pain in my lower back, he has to go after it.
Yeah.
So the only way to make that, so, they put over in the commentary that, 3 weeks ago, he fell off this freaking roof, but it was actually 2 days ago. And they say, yeah, he's still hurt. And so, again, you watching the match, you probably think I'm just selling and, trying to look convincing, but he picked me up, and I forgot exactly what happened, but I remember he whipped me like into the buckle, which is a bump I take a million times. But I hit that buckle and I fell, and I was like, I don't know if I can stand up. Like it was just, I was in a lot. Wow. I would probably say that was probably the worst pain I've ever wrestled in.
How are you not in a wheelchair right now? I don't understand taking that kind of punishment. That is unnatural, man.
Yeah. That's funny, because I had like bulging disc when I was like 23, and my doctor said, you're definitely going to be in a wheelchair if you don't stop. And I did stop, but actually, I don't know if it's just I got more. Part of it is probably because I took long breaks, actually, because I was actually wrestling pro when I was in law school, but halfway through I stopped because I was getting close to the point where I knew I was gonna have to take the bar exam. And so I, at 20, probably 7, I took 3 or 4 years off, and then I took time off before that as well. That may have helped, but I could tell you, and this is no joke, there hasn't been a night this year that I have not woken up in the middle of the night with excruciating pain in my back. And that's concerning to me, because that didn't start happening till this year. 2019, I don't think I remember ever saying I have lower back pain. And so that came on very quickly. And I'm wondering if it's because I put on a lot of weight because of COVID. because I don't get out as much anymore. Part of me wonders if it's because I stopped training because of COVID.
I think it's both.
Yeah, because everyone said you need to stop doing that shit because you're going to kill yourself, and I'm wondering if because I kept training at least, that it wasn't like keeping me strong enough so that I didn't feel that. So that was one of the reasons why I hit Tony up a couple of weeks ago, because I was like, I need to get back to training, and if I'm going to train, there's only one thing I want to do.
Yeah, and you can do it, and the weight will make a difference, because of your joints, and I have the low back issues, so when I'm lighter, not lifting heavy, I feel much better.
Yeah.
And for me, it could be 5 or 7 pounds that makes the difference.
Because you're right, and it's just strange to me because like I would take these like crazy falls when I was wrestling in Las Vegas. Like the third week I was there, I took a bump from the apron to the concrete. Or no, I was actually on the concrete floor. So I came and I took a bump, and I was standing up, and they had no padding on the floor there, and I bumped onto the concrete. And the promoter said, I want you to do that every week. So literally every week I wrestled in Las Vegas, which was 9 months, every Friday I had to take at least one standing bump, standing up, taking a hit, and taking a full-on back bump onto the concrete. And then toward the end, because I knew I was headed out, I actually did a couple times where I was standing on the ring apron and I took a straight fall to the ground. And the thing is that it's in the training. Like I trained with Supreme, who taught me. This is what I always told people. Supreme taught me how to be tough. The very first day I trained with him, he punched me in the face. Not a work punch, not a let me show you how to punch. He punched me in the face as hard as he could because he wanted to see if I really wanted to train. And then he made me take clotheslines from him for the next 30 minutes without ever teaching me how to fall, without teaching me how to take a clothesline. And then after like 45 minutes, and I think he kind of realized I beat the shit out of this guy. He's still getting up, but he's also kind of wearing thin. He's like, okay, I think you really want to be a wrestler. Come back next week and I'll start teaching you. And that's how Supreme taught. He taught me to be tough. I mean, from a guy who always felt like he had a really high pain tolerance, he drove me to the limit each and every week. And that's how I train my kids. Tony, I remember when we were, because you're pretty rough too, when you're with a guy that, wants to be serious. And I remember when I was taking Max out to the school and I was stretching him, you're like, God, be careful with them. We're just working out. And I'm like, it's how I was trained to not so much hurt somebody, but take them to the
cusp
of it. And, but in all those, years that I was doing that, you would hurt. I'm not saying that you wouldn't. You would hurt. You would bump on Friday and you would feel it Saturday. But by Tuesday, I was always feeling okay. So, and I don't know if that's because I learned how to fall. I don't know if that's the high pain tolerance. I don't know if that's because I don't know what to attribute that to. But I've become quite concerned because, when COVID, started to shut everything down last year, I decided to reformulate my law practice. Tony, you remember when you were down in San Diego? I think the last time I had just gone off on my own.
Yes.
And I remember you telling me that you're really concerned. Like, do you have a plan for this? And so I told you, yeah, I have a plan, and I told you what it was. And you said, okay, I'm glad you have a plan because you're doing really good things with the firm you're with. And, you've not been a lawyer, that many years. I think it was 5 or 6 years at the time. Well, I probably should have took your advice because, I had a plan, but then things change. And the laws that I was using on the civil side of my practice started to change because the court started to apply them differently. And so it took me a couple of years to really start to adjust to that. And what I decided to do when COVID hit is I said, I'm going to rip everything like a car, take everything apart, examine it all, and put it back together. And it worked because now my business is actually doing way better than it was at any point in time. And that's during COVID. COVID. 2019 was 2020 was my most profitable year ever going solo, and actually better than any year did it at the firm. So, but the other side of that is I neglected everything else. I neglected myself. I neglected training. I neglected, and it kind of goes back to what you were talking about. It's like, if you really want to be good at something, you have to give it your all. And so I spent this whole year ripping this thing apart, rebuilding it. And now I'm thinking, I think it's time for me to get back to training, because
I'd love it if you would. You have the ability, you have the skill.
Because the thing is, if you don't train your body, you can't train your mind. Your body goes, it all goes. And so I still never got through the Lucky 13.
Yeah, no, don't feel bad. But I'll tell you something, Andre, that day I was going to email you and I had my laptop open and boom, there's an email from you. I mean, it freaked me out. I'm like, uh-oh. No, because that's just bizarre, because I literally opened up my laptop to email you and there's an email from you. I'm like, I can't believe this. I freaked out. But, I wish you would get back into working out. Little baby steps, work your way into it, and within 6 weeks, you'll be like, wow. And then within let's see, 4, 8, 12, 3 months, you'll be pretty fit. It doesn't take forever. You're not looking for the set a world record here, but man, it'd be great. Yeah, and you always have an open invitation to come here. I got room. I've changed everything around. This is the basement that you see. Last time you were here, we had the world's worst pizza. But yeah.
Wait, we had Nancy's. Oh, you meant the pizza we had while playing cards.
Yes.
Oh my God, that stuff was nasty.
They think it's great in this town. This ain't Chicago now. This is a little friggin' rural thing. It's the worst pizza ever.
That was really bad.
Oh man, I got yelled at by because I said, "Oh, it's the worst pizza ever." Oh, you don't know pizza. I don't know pizza. I mean, coming from Chicago, you're telling me I don't know pizza? Come on. But yeah, it was great to hear from you and shit. But COVID is kicking everybody's butt in a way. Training will always be different now. People have found out mostly that they can get do other things in life.
Yeah.
But I think this distance thing, this whatever you want to call it, virtual is going to be the wave of the future for a lot of industries. And
absolutely.
I think it's going to be great. I'm going to do a couple more things. I'm going to experiment down here with, I told you, I want to start this like monthly membership thing, or I don't know yet, but we want to get cranking in March, like a subscription thing. And, just obviously I'm by myself, so I'm going to show a lot of solo moves, and it's good because there's a lot of people out there that are also by themselves, especially now they have a problem with a training partner or this or that. And even if you have a training partner, I could still work with you, not a big deal. And the boys do come out now and then. But yeah, it's just,
you still over there by the lake, that beautiful lake?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's all full of snow and ice now, but it's a bad winter, but,
I'll never remember the first time that me and Max went out to Chicago, and he was like, "What is that white stuff?" It was like it's snow. So he decided he wanted to make a snow angel, but he didn't realize that it like melted. So he took a bump into the ice and it didn't budge.
Oh, that was so funny.
Waving his arms, trying to make a snow.
We got done training, and I was taking you on your tour of Chicago, and I got that damn email that I got hacked at
from PayPal.
PayPal, they wiped me out. They took every penny I had. And then you're like, "Don't worry, I'll help you out." And then we had to come all the way back here so I could talk to the cops, and the cops like, "Well, we can't help you." Oh man.
Yeah, I was prepared to bring a big old lawsuit, but they gave you your money back, thank God.
Yeah, a couple of weeks later, I got the money back. Yeah, and the police never. I told the one police officer that I talked to, I told her, I said, "Look, because they had the guy on film, I'm like, I'll come down." This guy was like miles and miles away from where I live, 2 hours maybe. I said, "I'll come to court. Let's get this guy. He's been ripping people off. Let's get him." But I never heard back from them. So whatever.
From the Apple store, I remember that.
Yeah, it was the Apple store.
It's funny you say that, because just yesterday I got a big file from a woman who just had her entire checking account wiped out through a PayPal account. So I'm going to be helping her out.
Good, man. I've never been in an Apple store in my life. I use only, Android products and just Windows, yeah, I mean, that's just the way it is. But yeah, Maximiliano, I liked him, man. He enrolled in law school or something, right?
He's following me to law school. He says, "I followed you to wrestling. I'm going to follow you to law school." So He isn't there yet, but he says he's going to do it. He's finishing up his undergrad. I think he finishes this year or next. And
Wow.
yeah, and going back to the distance learning, speaking of law school, the law school that I teach at right now is the one that I graduated from, and I was trying to encourage them to go online. And the dean there, he's really old school. He's an absolute genius when it
Where
comes
did
to
you go?
constitutional.
You went to Absorbing Junior College? Is that where you went? Or?
What's that?
Never mind.
But I was trying to convince them to go online, and then they were forced online because of the COVID thing. And now they've actually have restructured the whole school to stay as a 100% online law school. And so you're right. It really is the future for so many things.
Well, Phoenix University was doing that online.
Yeah, they were doing that.
Yeah. I mean,
before it was cool.
Before it was cool. Yeah. But, for me, I've told this, I just made a tape about, or a video on YouTube about this a couple weeks ago about, I can, if I'm watching you live, sometimes things happen so quickly, or I can't catch it, can't get to the angle.
It gets missed.
Right. It gets missed. With video, if you're the student and you capture the video properly, I can see it and I can review it over and over. And more importantly, I can show you, look at yourself, look what you're doing wrong. Because sometimes I can tell you something, and we're all like this. We're a little stubborn. I didn't do that. He's wrong. I didn't do that. Then when you see yourself, you're like, oh shit, okay, he's right.
Well, if you remember at my school, we had 3 cameras set up on the ring, and that was why, because I would take them and show them what it was that was they were doing wrong, and they got more out of that than me screaming at them, don't leave your foot on the feet when you take your bump, or whatever I'm screaming at them about.
Well, no, that's the way it is. And, and I in a way, I don't have my gym, but this is great because I can come down here. It's in my basement and got room. And I just hope, I hope the Tri-C program picks up. I think one of the problems is people don't know about these podcasts, and they don't know about the YouTube channel, even though I got, several thousand subscribers. I don't think they're aware of it. And I don't know, for 30, 20 years, 25 years I've been online. I know nothing about marketing. And Tom Antion tried to help me. I got to call him. I forgot. He wants me to get in touch with him. I got to email him. He, brought me out there. He came here for training, and then I came out there to do his marketing course. And I just, I don't have the aptitude for it. Some people just don't, I have a hard time with it. So I think I've
always said you're the best kept secret, but
let's get the secret out. Yeah. Let's get the secret out, man, because I'd like to make I'm tired of not being able to, we got to do it. So somehow it'll change. But you've been very gracious. You've been one of the fellas that has helped me through the years, through these, since Kevin got killed in the gym and everything.
I missed that guy. He was he was one of a kind. One of a kind.
Nobody ever like him again, man. We had a podcast a little bit about him, but one day we'll do we'll dedicate a podcast to him. But no, you guys like you, Nico and Joe, and all the guys that I've had on the show here. Well, except for Nico's brother, I never met him, but all have been great, top of the line people, man. And we're all getting older, and times are changing, the industry's changing, and I just wish there was some people that really wanted to learn the hardcore, the old style, the real deal, and especially for guys who know that they're never going to be a competitive athlete because of life. They might want to learn other things. Well, I can help them with that too. And, we'll just see how it goes. But
yeah, I think it's just a matter of getting the word out there. Cause I could tell you, you came out to East LA once to train, and you were a bigger fan. My students loved you. All they talked about you for years until the end was you. And
they're great guys and gals.
Yeah. And, I think it's just a matter of exposing you. I never understood how people really found the gym that exists and the ability that exists, the asset that you are. And you're a friend of mine, but I only met you because I knew who you were. I knew from sources that I trusted that you were the real deal. And as good as you are as a fighter, you're a better person. But truly,
thank you.
If anybody really wants to learn how to fight, conditioning, weightlifting, boxing, all those things, you're the only choice in my mind. And I think that, and maybe, offline we can all collaborate, because I think that what you three are doing here is great. I've become a big fan. I didn't know you had a podcast. I'm not a big podcast fan, but I started doing the a law podcast for like street law for people. The law
I listen to them.
Thank you.
They're awesome. Yes.
So I've been really enjoying the conversations you guys been having, and big fan. And Joe, I miss working out with you. We got to get together and do it some more.
Oh yeah, Joe's good.
Joe's very talented.
I'm going to be setting up tables for when you come back.
Good job.
And I'm going to be waiting tables, right? I'll be a waiter in an Italian restaurant. Yeah,
I never got to work out you, Nico, but one day we got to do it, bro. We got to do it.
Yeah, Nico's an awesome guy.
That'd be great.
Yeah, it's just about exposure, I guess, like you say. I was always more of the technical guy. And, my last name should have been Serafini, like the great drummer, because, I've been burned by so many people. I'm on fire. That's another thing. You get burned. People lie. They smear you. It's all bullshit. You've been through it.
I've been through that a lot. I
knew somebody.
That's why I got out of the business. I got tired of it.
I won't mention this guy's name, but I knew somebody. Here he was a bartender when I met him, but he was a pro wrestler, and I knew him when he was a bouncer and someplace. I don't want to give away too much information because he was a very private guy, and that's exactly what had to happen. He went really underground, private, because in the pro wrestling world, there was shit being said about him that just wasn't true, and he was one of the nicest guys. I lost touch with him because I told you he went underground, and but he was well known in the Chicago wrestling circles and maybe other circles as well, professional wrestling, but hell of a nice guy. Matter of fact, he wanted to do a show and he wanted me to do a shoot match on there. It never happened because I guess he went underground, before this could ever, but that would have been cool because I would have been able to finally just, on a professional wrestling show, not do professional wrestling, just go in there. I told him I would do it, but I says, I'm going to finish the fight in less than 60 seconds. It's going to be over. I'm going to show the world, it's boom, like I do in the gym. It would have been boom. And that was like back when I was still peaking, I was like, we're talking about when I was about 40, 41, 42, where I was still fast and everything and strong. That would have been great, but whatever.
That was the goal that I really had there at the end, was trying to get like wrestling back to its roots and to get people to really understand that wrestling came from a very vicious fighting style. And then, if you go back to the Olympics, the one time that they allowed, I don't know if it's a one time, but when they allowed catch wrestling in the Olympics, and then they said, I think there's an LA Times article that said it was like synonymous, like dog fighting, because it was so violent. It's certainly, like I said, if it's just sport, you just want to work out to live and work out for fitness, it's a really, really great, useful thing to know, but it's got so many other applications. And if you're in the, pro wrestling, I would recommend that you pick up the knowledge of the history of the sport of pro wrestling from the last person that has it. And that comes straight from Luthez himself.
Yeah, he was a great guy. I miss him. I was in the hospital when he passed away. They wouldn't tell me. Nobody would tell me, Javier, none of them, because I wasn't doing so good. So they were worrying that I would have a relapse or a breakdown or some shit like that. And I found out afterwards, which I was talking to him when I was in the hospital. He called me up. We were talking, and then he had a heart procedure. And, that was the thing. So, great guy, but he got really, really mellow. A lot of people told me he's mellow. You should have seen him, 30 years ago or whatever, 20 years ago. And I read some articles, interviews. He was, he told it, he was complimentary when it needed to be, but he told it like it is, on certain wrestlers. He says, I'll stretch the guy, there's just no chance. He has no chance. And Lou was really like I've said this before, he always kept fit. He didn't let himself go, he kept himself in shape. And, Radvan, while he was never muscular, he was the strongest man I ever met, grip and everything. He was doing feats of strength in his 70s. These were my inspirations, Radvan, and then Kevin, that got killed. I mean, you saw that. I mean, he was amazing.
Kevin was a tough guy. He was.
Oh yeah.
Kevin's like a man's man. He reminds me of like
yeah.
an old 50s, like
Yeah.
cigar smoking,
Yeah.
like steel
He'd
worker.
be hitting the heavy bag with a cigar in his mouth. It was classic. I mean, really. But Lou was the last, you know, so a lot of the wrestlers that I knew, the older, they're gone now. They were never in shape. They let themselves go. They were this or that, crippled. You know, Lou had hips replaced and all that jazz, but he was still fit. You know, we were lifting weights at his place, you know, in the health club there. And, you know, I said, this is how I'm going to be, you know, God willing, you know, I'm not going to, you know, unless I have a crippling injury, you know. So now when the COVID hit, I couldn't go to the gym, but I watched my weight. I did my little, some exercises here, and, you know, I just, you know, I'm kept in shape, you know, and that's important, you know. There's no excuse. 5-10 pounds for me. All right. That's when I gotta, you know, bring it down. And normally I don't gain that much weight, but sometimes you just do. And I monitor it. It's not a narcissist thing. It's just, I want to feel good about myself, and I want to defend myself. I don't want to be gassed out and blown out. You know, I can't go like I did when I was 20. I'm almost 60 years old right now, but, you know, I just want to keep it going, man. I don't want to be like some others that, you know, in other walks of life that just, you know, let themselves go when they didn't need to. You know, I've seen some famous athletes. I'm not going to mention names. They're okay. I mean, they got irregular injuries like, you know, I have, but they let themselves go. You know, they blew up, and I'm like, God, man, why would you? Man, don't do that. It's just compounding all your health issues. You know, so your joints can't take that extra weight, man.
Yeah, I think that the only way to keep yourself strong and healthy is, and I'm learning that right now. I'm learning that firsthand. Like I said, I took a year off, and, you know, really mentally did a lot, but physically sat in a chair for 12 hours a day for a year straight, barely left my house. And I'm glad for what I accomplished, but I also realize balance is important, and being healthy is important. And, you know, what better cardio workout is there than wrestling too? So
yeah, it's anaerobic and everything. Yeah, throw some boxing and wrestling together. You got it, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I guess we're going to have to start signing off. We went on a long one, a 2-hour show today. I know Joe stayed longer than he needed to be.
Yeah, sorry, Joe.
No, we need to get you back on again.
Oh,
I would appreciate it. Anytime you guys want, I'm always here.
Yeah,
so
because next time we can talk about different things, you know, maybe some of the funny stories that you've met, people and incidents and stuff. And, you know, that would be great. But I just want to tell everybody out there that, you know, he put on Andre was not only just a great, entertaining professional wrestler, he was also a great wrestling instructor and a warm, knowledgeable, very generous human being. He's helped me out in spots in my life, and he's like a guardian angel in that regard. You can't find a better guy. And I know from what other people told me, he's like a kid, but he's a super lawyer. He's a super lawyer. He's one of those, he's going to be famous. Trust me, and not infamous. He'll be famous in his law career. Something's going to happen. Believe me, in a good way. I have that belief in you, man. I believe in you.
Thanks, Tony. I appreciate it.
I mean it. So, Nico, I want to thank you again, and hopefully I can see you soon. And hopefully now that maybe I can get my car out by the weekend. It's been iced in. It hasn't moved in 5 weeks. And I need to get it out. You know, my friends, Holly and Piff, they brought some rock salt bags. So I will throw them down tomorrow, and we're supposed to have 40s for the next 3 days. I'm hoping that'll at least get my car out. So I
75 and sunny here in California.
Why don't you shut up? Cut him off. Cut the audio. I don't want to hear the 75 degrees. Yeah, go have a taco or something. You know, I mean, I can't even get
a good plan.
Yeah, I can't have that where I'm at. I can't. They don't even have good Mexican food over here, man. We got nothing. I got to get back to Chicago, man. I'm dying for some, you know, Taco Burrito King so I can have my Mexican breakfast and then go to some of the restaurants I like are gone. But anyway, we'll say that for the next time. But I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Joe for, as always, looking. I mean, what can I say? It's sickening, you know. You're just like you said. In the words of Joe Cardinal, I'm a beautiful man. Yeah, you are, Joe. I couldn't agree with you more. And Nico, you're the boisterous one. You're the loud one. But I'm glad to
Help
see
it.
your, huh?
I can't help it.
See what I mean? See how he is? See that projection? See how loud? He's overwhelming. All right, guys. We will.
He's very commanding. Very commanding.
Yes. Yes. Speaking of commands, another hottie was Barbara Eden. Every week we have to mention somebody. She was very attractive. You know, with her commands. Yes, master. Oh, yeah, only. All right. I'll see you guys next week.
All right. Have a good one, guys.
Thank you so much for having me, and you guys have a good week.
Thanks for coming on, Andrew.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Andre.